Hi guys, my name is Miss Bishop. I teach middle school art, but I like to appeal to lots of levels of people. So hopefully this will inspire you. The general ideas that we're going to be discussing are process and product. However, our more thorough objective is to determine and begin having a meaty mindset for your art and to make a fun and meaningful artwork. So that might be while you're listening to me talk, or it could be afterwards that you make that artwork. So, two of the different approaches that we will be taking are talking about the creative process, and that might include the process-based art that most of you have heard about. Also, we're going to be talking about the artist's habits of mind, okay? And these kind of things will help with that meaty mindset. And with the product, we will talk about how do you focus on design and or your subject. I think design is always important, but sometimes people focus more on the subject first and need to get immersed in that. So let's start by going over the artist's habits of mind. And I'm treating you like you're in my classroom with me, so I'll have lots of interactive things and be holding things and drawing things. So I hope that works for you. So this is an example of some of the research I did. There are lots of little charts and things about the artist's habits of mind. I'm going to tell you my notes so that it might help you start to digest these things, to work on that mindset. One of them is to develop your craft. This, to me, the big idea is to practice, okay? And to start my practice, I Google techniques. I might be inspired by the technique itself, like we're gonna do some pouring. It's so fun, like you're ready to go with just a little bit of research. Or it could develop a metaphor for you or an analogy. You might say, man, I'm pouring out my emotions. So either way is good, whether you like the process or if the product motivates you. We all are driven in different ways. So when you're developing your craft, step one, it's fun and there's some nitty gritty things, right? So when I first start teaching, I start teaching grid drawing and then step-by-step method. So when I talk about grid drawing, I'm talking about when you have an image and you break it up into small pieces, small boxes. Most of you have probably at least seen this in a coloring book. I have two little girls and I know at least they have it in their coloring book. My subject matter today is a lion. It has a lot of meaning to me, and I was also asked to talk about a lion. Here's an example of an artist workstation. They have some techniques they've practiced. They have their image they've used with a grid. They have a way to cover up, so they only have to look at one part of the image at a time. And you can see they even just are using Crayola markers. Also, and then you see their finished work. So that kind of gives you a big overview of something you could do, but you don't have to use Crayola markers. You could use, I have some coffee back here. I have tempera paints, pencils, chalks, anything that you have at home. You might even have like old makeup that you could use. I remember in high school I went through a phase where I'm like, I don't want to wear makeup anymore. So I like used all my old makeup to make an artwork. So when I teach the grid, I have kids practice on a worksheet and then they make their own grid. And sometimes that might be from your own photography, and sometimes that might be from an image you photoshopped. Nowadays, like even on a phone, you could get Adobe Photoshop Mix and make a little image. It's always best if you generated the image in some form or fashion, whether you edited Google Images or whether you took the photo. If you're just practicing and not trying to sell it, okay, a Google image, at least you're like creating and you're doing something, right? Another way to approach your image is to do grid step by step or gesture sketch contour. I really like this image because it shows you can create your own gesture or your own step by step, if you will. So you see this artist had a photo and then they drew some basic shapes on top of it. Most of you have seen this method before. Maybe in a book growing up, maybe on YouTube. It's pretty popular. So, and it could be cartoon to realistic. It's all over the map. Some ways of thinking and personalities really prefer this method. And each technique, gridding, versus step-by-step method is teaching your brain to focus on less information. Just like when we learn to read, we look at one piece of information at a time and we're not overwhelmed by the whole thing. We're not expected to look at a whole page of words and look away and remember it. That's ridiculous, right? So with drawing, you're measuring distances in space and you need to do one piece of information at a time. Okay, so going through our artist habits of mind, we've got developing our craft, right? And that could be like, you're like, but Miss Bishop, I want to do colored pencils. I want to do paint. So Google painting techniques. Find charts. Find YouTube artists that you think, wow, I want to watch them practice this technique and then I want to try. And be fair to yourself, right? You're learning, you're a student. There is value in creating. It's like breathing. Why would you say like, I breathed wrong? So be fair to yourself. Number 2, I call it laser. It's engage and persist. You got to decide your subject, right? And you can go back and change your mind. That's the cool thing about art, right? Or maybe you might even develop your subject as you go along. So you're developing your focus. And this could help with like other ways of thinking. I picked a line, right? You might develop an idea like, I want to do something about freedom or joy, or I want to really see what other artists are doing and learn about ideas. Maybe you're into science. So you're like, I really want to learn the chemistry of paint and binder versus pigment and how to break apart this pigment.